Thursday evening, everybody. Chris McDonald with you. We're grateful to have you. This is the 20th day of March, 2025, day number 60 of the Trump presidency. We're grateful to have our dear buddy Brad Johnson on the line with us tonight. He's with us on Zoom. And Brad, it is always a pleasure to have you. And I want to tell you, buddy, I know you've been sort of fighting it with your knees and all, but thank you for being with us tonight. And truly, I mean that. And thank you again for coming on the McFiles show. Grateful to have you, buddy. Always a pleasure. Good to Well, that's good. That is very good, and we're grateful for that. Hang on just a second. We're having some problems with our YouTube channel tonight. We've got we've had a weird week with technology, but hopefully things will be good. Hey man, I'm grateful you're on tonight. I know the big elephant in the room is the JFK files, and I'm just curious what your thoughts are about that and so forth, and where you think all this is headed, and has there been anything that you see that so far? I don't know if you've had time to look at these files or not. I saw a few websites that have sort of delved into it. It's 80,000 pages, but in all fairness, there's this. I've always, and I said this from the beginning. I said it last night, the night before last, that I don't think it's going to reveal any major smoking bomb other than stuff that for almost 60 years now. I mean, this goes back to 1963, so we're talking what 62 years, and it's not like people have not had these theories. And I almost laughed at one of the things I saw that people supposedly found out about the files, and that is that J. Edgar Hoover tried to stop conspiracy theories about the JFK assassination back in the 1960s. Hoover didn't have to worry about the internet then. Even then, they were trying to cut a bunch of nonsense out. So I'm like, that's not a newsflash, guys. I mean, that's been part of life forever. But man, you're a former CIA operative, and I'm just curious what you think about all this stuff and your thoughts on what if you think there's going to be any major bombshell news that's coming out of these files, in your opinion.
There's now a lot of things that are released were already released, but they were released in redacted forms. So now they're being released unredacted. So a lot of it is that sort of thing too. So it's not it's new, but it's not new. So there's a lot of that in the mix as well. I think what's going to happen is most of the people are going to end up sort of ignoring what's significant out of it. But as far as like bombshells of what everybody's expecting, like some sort of cover up of a conspiracy or something like that, I don't think you'll see anything of that nature because I don't think there is anything of that nature. I think for me, what it was is it was always backed by organized crime, and the votes that were brought out of Chicago and the Kennedy family and what they had to do to win and bring all those votes in. If you go back and look at how that election turned out and how he ended up beating Nixon and all that stuff, there was a lot of shenanigans going on there with organized crime. And then after he got elected, Bobby became the attorney general and just starts going out and absolutely giving a shellacking to organized crime, and they were the ones that got him in office. So they were the guys with the motive. People talk a lot about the CIA having the motive, but that just wasn't the way it operated. Basically, what they're saying for the CIA, the motive was the Bay of Pigs, where basically Kennedy betrayed the Cuban exiles that were going back in to try and take back the Cuban island. He abandoned them, and they all got shot. So I mean, that's pretty crappy behavior on his part. But Kennedy was, he was basically a coward. You look at the Cuban Missile Crisis, and he got a lot of credit for that, but it was all BS, as it turned out. He was supposedly, said, absolutely not. You do anything with those weapons that you have in Cuba, and we're going to say the attack is from you, and we'll respond directly to you. And supposedly, the Russians blinked, and pulled out all those missiles. But what they don't talk about is that a few months later, we pulled all our missiles out from near the border from them in Turkey. That was the tit for tat. He was basically a coward. He was not a very good president, and so I just don't see the CIA theory being all that realistic. It would be extraordinarily difficult for these guys to do it. These guys that were at the CIA in those days had all come out of World War II, and they just weren't the type. That just wasn't something that's natural for them. Where it's the credo of the mafia. If we make a deal with you and you betray us, we kill you. And I think that's what happens. So I think Lee Harvey Oswald, if there's anybody else involved, and the ties back to the criminal world were all there. The guy who shot Oswald and killed him was a low-level criminal guy that was dying of cancer anyway. So I think if you went back and looked to see if there was a payoff to his family after shooting Oswald, there'd be something there. So I mean, I think what's going to happen is there's going to be little bits of hints of things like that. But the people that are looking at it, they don't want to see all that because that's the dirty underbelly of the Kennedy family. So I think that's what's going to happen is it's all going to be, oh, there's nothing there. There's no there. But I think there is a lot of documentation that points in that direction. I just don't think people want to, I don't think they want to see it. And I don't think they want to hear it. And while the public might, the reporters don't.
So you think they want to blame the CIA for, and I've seen Israel's name pop up, Brad, in a lot of these posts. I mean, there's people that are claiming that Mossad was behind this, and I got a dear friend, James R. You've met James before, and he said today it was really what wisdom. He said Israel wasn't even but 14 years old as the reformed nation in 1963, and this all these things that go out there, and I think you've given a very plausible explanation because Lee Harvey Oswald, he evidently did have Soviet ties, and he was tied to some unsavory characters. Well, again, that's not a news flash. After 63 years, we already knew that. That's been documented for the last 6 decades. I guess I see all this being nothing but a distraction because there are so many other more serious matters that we as a nation are facing right now. And we're in a dangerous time, man. I mean, look, we got Hamas and Israel going back at each other, the Ukraine Russia war. We're hoping that's going to get settled here soon. But, Brad, we've got an internal enemy. I mean, we have got an internal enemy in our nation. And I tell you, it's coming from the bench, it's coming from these judges that have just absolutely just set a blank you to the executive branch, and they think they can tell the executive branch what to do. And I don't see it being constitutional. And the Supreme Court, which I don't have a lot of faith in tonight, they're going to have to step in and do something soon, or this is going to get out of hand.
I think you'll see that happen. These cases are going to make their way up to the Supreme Court, and I think they'll be fast tracked. A lot of them are going to be fast tracked up to the Supreme Court. So I think you'll start to see decisions come down. That whole system isn't, you know, a speedy process. So those things normally grind on for years. So I think you'll see it take place in months, not years. But which is, like I said, that's speedy by the court system standard, but it's not fast for you and me and any normal person. Um, I agree with you. There's a lot important going on. I think the release of the documents is more than a distraction per se. I think it's part of the overall, excuse me, I think it's part of the overall strategy of the Trump White House, and that is it's this constant kind of almost like a waterfall of things happening, and it's they're trying to keep up the rhythm, and so whenever there's a quiet spot somewhere in between, they'll throw something into the mix, and I think the release of these documents is just one more thing. All the stuff like uh, in the news cycle, for example, supposedly, oh, there's, some of the AID employees that got fired, shouldn't have been fired that way. And getting rid of AID is not constitutional with that. That's ridiculous. Getting rid of AID not being constitutional. You have all sorts of BS going on out there among different, legal pundits and judges and stuff, but that's all crap. That's not going to go anywhere. But what it's done is what you see is the methodology to what the Trump administration is doing is they're keeping up the pace, and they're just doing the next thing, 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 and all of that stuff that was in the previous news cycle is gone. Nobody's going to go back to AID. That's not going to be some huge news cycle thing. It's over and done. Next is going to be Department of Education. That's going to get the axe too. Which thank God for that. If they can the one thing that I see out of all of that is that the Trump administration so far seems to be backing down on vouchers, and they need vouchers because what we need is competition in the educational system, so that the teachers union doesn't rule the roost. They don't make all the rules and all the decisions and all of that. A voucher moves that decision into the hands of the parents, not into the hands of the teachers union, which is absolutely the worst possible place where our children's educations can be decided. The absolute best place is in the hands of the parents of our children, so that they can vote with that voucher and go to the school that they want. And that, by the way, that opens up a lot of things that are good for everybody. For example, if your child is gifted athletically, there's schools that have really good athletic programs. You can take the voucher, go hand it in over there, and you're off. Those high schools and stuff are going to be recruitment centers for the college teams and so on. So you're gonna put that young person on the right path for those athletics. If they're gifted scholastically, they got a brain. There's going to be other schools that are good for that. If they're remedial, if they have trouble reading and have problems and stuff, there's going to be schools that specialize in that. So that voucher is freedom to get the best education for your kid that you can possibly get. And by the way, rich people in the United States can do that now. It's the poor people that cannot. What that does is that makes that voucher in their hand, makes an even more even playing field for everybody. I mean, that's what our country should be like, and what I hope it goes to. Why the Trump administration so far seems to be backing off on that, I don't know. I'm not particularly critical of Trump. I think he's doing a fantastic job, but I would say there's a little bit of room for improvement right there. They need to get the voucher system up and running.
Muted. From Brad Johnson's perch, 60 days in, I'm just going to leave this mic open and it'll just have to vibrate a little bit. From your perch, what is the greatest thing that you've seen in 60 days from Trump? And you mentioned the education voucher thing, maybe being something they can improve on. Um, I give him an A plus so far. I just haven't seen anything that has disturbed me whatsoever. I think the media is beginning to get their feet back underneath them. These attacks, the left is getting their wind. They got the wind knocked out of them in November, and they've had the wind knocked out of them since January the 20th. But you begin to see a lot of this stuff start happening again that happened the first term. And even Fox News and some of these reporters from Fox, they're sort of taking jabs and taking their shots. And, we just don't seem to enjoy prosperity in this country. I mean, we just came within a hair length of having our nation basically blown to smithereens, and God knows where we'd be at tonight if this was 60 days of Kamala Harris as compared to 60 days of Trump. What's your thoughts on his first 60 days, and what grade do you give him?
Plus, as well, he's doing a fantastic job. He's the only guy out there that could have run for president to do and be able to do the things he's doing. He's the only one. There was nobody else. So we've gotten very lucky to have him be on hand for us to be president of the United States and start doing this stuff to cut back on government. There's just no question. I mean, just everybody has always acknowledged that government's fat and a lot of overlap and duplication and triplication and quadruplication of effort out of all the different agencies that are out there doing things. So all of this is to the good. It may piss you off because you hate Trump for some reason, but the fact is this is good for America and good for all of us as citizens of the United States. Also on some of the prices, yeah, egg prices, oh man, they're outrageous. But egg prices are high because the Biden administration made all the chicken egg farmer guys kill off most of the chickens. Well, it takes a while to start raising new chickens to lay eggs. So, all this will be fixed, but it takes a little bit of time to react. But they're free to start, raising more chickens, egg-laying chickens, to then put into production once the production comes up, the price will come down. Supply versus demand. So he's doing great. You're just seeing the beginnings of the gas prices are starting to come down. As soon as gas prices continue to go down there, and they're doing, Trump said it right in an interview, on several interviews, but he basically says it boils down to energy. We need to make energy cheap because that makes everything else cheap, and that's
Exactly.
absolutely the case. And if diesel is cheap, every item in all of our grocery stores, I mean, there's an exception somewhere, but 99.9% of all grocery stores get everything delivered by truck, and that is diesel. So if diesel prices go down, the cost of delivering the goods to the grocery store goes down, prices go down. It takes a while, but that's what's going to happen. Before Trump was elected, he was saying 6 months or a year, you're going to see all the prices go down, and that's true. He's only 2 months into it. It's going to take a little bit longer, but we've seen the beginning of it.
Yes, we
Gas
have.
prices are starting to drop. So that's the first step. The energy costs have to continue to go down, and they will. He did it last time. He's going to do it this time. He's already said he was going to do it. He's already talked about how he's going to do it. He's going to increase the supply, and that works. Every time it's tried, the old supply and demand thing is what do the Democrats call it? Settled science. It's a settled science item. That just plain works. So that's what he's doing, and it's going to work again.
Yeah, I'm with you totally. What has been your opinion on Elon Musk so far? I think he's doing an outstanding. I know there's a lot of people think he's Antichrist. He's got devil horns coming out of his head and 666 on his forehead, and I've heard so much crap. And the Dems are calling for his head. The Dems are inciting violence against his company, which I think is domestic terrorism myself, a form of it. But you've got Jasmine Crockett out there saying for her birthday wish she hopes Elon Musk goes down. Now, I guess it's how you defend goes down, whether she's making a threat or not. But what's your opinion about him? I think that Brad, what he's doing right now is things that we have needed to have done in this country for 50 years. And he's cut fraud out of the government, man. I mean, I know he's not going to do everything just right, and I know there's going to be some things that he does that it's going to be painful and hurtful when you start, because when you do this and you start cutting the pig, you start cutting the pork, it's gonna be a little pain involved in the short term, but the long term, we may save us from bankruptcy as a nation, will it not?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, the naysayers. It gets. You remember, like, probably 10 days ago, they had something where a little boy had brain cancer and was probably dying of this tumor in his brain, and wanted to have a uniform of it was a Secret Service or Border Patrol or something
Yeah,
like that. I've forgotten now, but he comes and everybody claps for him, but not the Democrats. They sat down. They're not. You're not going to clap for a little boy who's probably dying of cancer. I mean, good God, what's wrong with you people? You ought to be able to at least agree on stuff like that. I mean, what's the harm in standing up for a little boy who's fighting for his life and has the dream of being in a uniform and growing and hopefully having the chance to grow up and do what his dream is, those sorts of things. But that's the level you've seen him sink to. Now, I will say, I don't think they're that much starting to get the wind back into their sails on the left and things like that. I think you're seeing a lot of infighting. Chuck Schumer's under a lot of pressure now. He's been out hitting the pavement, trying to get to all the press
mm-hmm.
interviews that he can do, and he's out trying to drum up defense for himself. He's got a lot of resources to bring to bear. He's going to probably save himself. You never know, but I don't think he's under tremendous threat as of yet. They're talking about having AOC run against him and stuff like that. Both are in New York. She's a House side. He's Senate Majority Leader, but they're talking about having her run for his seat and things like that. Which I think all that's hogwash. I think he would clean up the floor with AOC, but we'd have to see. I'm surprised she got elected at all.
Yeah, me too.
At any rate, I think there's a lot of undercurrents going on within the Democrat Party because who's their leadership? They don't have any. So if they take out Chuck Schumer, does that help or hurt? I would say, yeah, Chuck Schumer's a schmuck. He's not very good, but who do you got to replace him? AOC, that's your candidate. I mean, AOC is actually really stupid. She's like Kamala Harris. I mean,
Yeah,
and they're just actively stupid people. I mean, they don't. It's not that I disagree with them. It's that they're stupid. And there's other people that are smart that are Democrats that I disagree with vehemently. But I look at them and I know they're not stupid people. But with these two, or just as an example, they're morons. I mean, not literally, but they're not far above that mark. And But definitely they fall into that. Oh my God, that was a stupid thing to say and think, but they do it. At any rate, I think we're going to continue to see this move on. I think Elon Musk is doing well. He's handicapped by the fact that he has no clue about government. So a lot of the things that they've done so far have been missteps in the sense of how legally they go about trying to do what they're trying to do. So some of this stuff has been done wrong, and some of the memos and things that I see coming out of the government, uh, where they publish them to their employees and different things. I catch wind of some of these things, and some are pretty pissy and poorly written and stuff like that. But that's not what's important. Like I said, what's important to me out of all of this is they're maintaining that pace, and I think they're going to be able to keep that up for a very long time. And that just it keeps moving the football down the field, and it makes everything that has happened up to now, up to this point, as they keep doing this, yesterday's news. And so they're accomplishing a lot, just a lot, a lot, a lot. And yeah, the courts, these activist judges, which keep in mind, I try to make sure this definition is clear to everybody. What is an activist newspaper guy or reporter or judge or law enforcement? An activist judge or an activist law enforcement or an activist media person is somebody who doesn't care about right and wrong. They don't care about the law. They don't care about the Constitution. What makes them an activist is what they care about are their own political beliefs. So these activist judges are putting their political beliefs above the law. That's why you see them doing what they're doing. Most of it, as I said, you can file it under C for crap, and that's what's going to happen to it as it goes up the line. But this is how they're trying to fight back. But they're trying to fight back with stuff that's crap. They're not doing anything that's effective. So it's a stall tactic. It's going to fail. As it fails, it's going to crumble. And then what do they got? It's like I said with the leadership. Who do they got? What do they have? What are they doing?
Right.
What's their counter tactics? And nobody. I dare anybody to point at what they're doing and say, yeah, here's an organized effort going on the part of the Democrats. I think they're just in complete disarray.
Yeah, I'm with you there, buddy. I want to turn your attention overseas tonight. There seems to be some movement with the Ukraine-Russia war, and Trump has finally he talked to both Zelensky and Putin today. I know that neither player in this are good players. My personal opinion, I mean, look, I don't trust Putin past the camera, but I trust Zelensky even less. And you've got two individuals, and even with Ukraine overnight, they sent 435 missiles into a Russian field where the nukes are being held. Some of these nukes, and it's funny that Zelensky was out there today in Europe, basically telling the Ukrainians that their nukes are going to stay in the hands of the Ukrainian people. And Trump had went out today and talked about the fact that he's going to get an agreement with the Ukrainians that we're going to take over this with this mineral deal. And Brad, it's my gut. I want to get your take on this. I don't think he is any more serious about peace. And I'm not saying Putin is, but I don't really think Zelensky wants anything but our money. And I think that he is going to say anything and do anything he can to get the United States to write a check to keep this war going. And maybe he's found out that he can't push Trump around like Biden. But do you see a breakthrough in this? And do you think Trump can bring these two partners in good faith together to stop this horrible bloodshed that we've seen for the last 3 years in the Ukraine-Russia conflict?
Well, the way you phrased the question is, can he bring them together in good faith? Uh, no, I don't think anybody can bring Putin and Zelensky to do anything in good faith. Putin doesn't do good faith. That's not who he is. So I think in that sense, where it's like an honest, everybody's above board, puts their cards on the table and comes to agreement sort of thing, that ain't going to happen. That's just not in the cards. It's just not possible with the players that you have there. Can he force a peace? Yeah, I think there's a pretty good chance that he can force something on him. And some of the stuff he's talking about now, he's talked about taking over some energy and like the nuclear plants and things like that, and has commented how the U.S. has a lot better technology and we can strengthen what they've got as far as energy production and so on, which is all true. All that stuff is true, and minerals and different things. why does he suggest it? I mean, there's two things going on here. One is, yes, it would improve all that stuff, but if it becomes a U.S. interest and U.S. property, then we've got the right and obligation to defend those things. So that creates a de facto no man's land in some of these areas, and he can then go in and say, Russia, you back up, or we'll back you up. And so that's a different thing. So what he's doing there is negotiating peace. That's what he's doing with this stuff. Yeah, it's going to make economic sense for the United States too, which is great because we've been pouring money into Ukraine. So it's the least they can effing do, if you excuse my French. That's what the F stands for, French. And and so it makes sense to kind of across the board. So what I see him doing is actually pretty effective, and I'm impressed with it. Now, Putin thinks all of Ukraine should belong to him. So basically, what he's doing is drawing a line across the middle of Ukraine for everything that's of value is on his side of the line, and everything that he doesn't value is on the other side of the line. I mean, that's Putin's take on it. And Zelensky, I agree. I mean, I think the way to look at it is Zelensky making more money the way it is, or would he make more money if there was a peace enforced? And I think the answer is he's making more money as it is. So why does he want the peace? He's happy to see this go on. I don't think these guys, Putin doesn't care who gets killed. I don't think Zelensky cares that much who gets killed either. And I think a lot of the Ukrainian people are very devoted to the fighting. I think the Russians are not. There's a lot of rumors and some solid evidence that they Cubans in particular, because they've got too many young men without good jobs in Cuba roaming around. They're afraid of that fomenting, a revolt. So they ship those guys off to go cut trees and things like that in Siberia, which, by the way, Cuba's done that for like, I don't know, 60, 70 years. They send people up to Siberia for logging. And instead they get off the plane there, they're handed a gun, and some ammo and moved up to the front lines. They're used as cannon fodder troops. And of course, we've seen the North Korean troops and those guys show up too. But all those guys just get killed. They're not. North Korean troops, surprisingly, are crappy. I was kind of expecting a little more fight out of those guys, but they just walk up to the line, stick their head up, and get it shot off, I guess. So kind of like turkey shoot for most of this stuff. So they're not doing pretty well. I would say let's finish whatever you wanted on this, but there are a couple other countries I want to touch on, both Serbia and Greece. But we can come to that when you're ready.
No, go ahead.
Okay.
Go ahead with Turkey and Greece. Yes, go ahead.
Serbia and Greece.
Serbia.
I would say this is extraordinarily important. It has gotten a little bit of notice in the press, but this is actually one of the most pressing issues in my mind on the world stage right now. And I'm not sure, but I think it might be more important than Ukraine as it stands right now. And here's what's going on. Basically, the government of Serbia, which is a fairly middle of the road type of government. I mean, they're not particularly so badly corrupt. They're not, completely in the pocket of the Russians, although the United States government kind of official position is that, Serbia is in the pocket of the Russians. But these guys would be happy to walk the line and play both sides, cooperate with the United States and cooperate with Russia and those sorts of things, because that's just kind of their philosophy, who they are. The guy, who's head of there's Secretary of State, who's head of the Minister of Foreign Affairs. He's the guy that was the former ambassador to the United States. So he's lived here, knows it, speaks English and all of that. So he's perfectly willing to talk to the United States and get along. And they know, Marco Rubio and things like that. They like talking to these guys. They want to get along. So you've got this sort of middle of the road government in Serbia that's under just unending assault. And it's an extremely well financed, extremely well organized thing. Just look over the last 2 days ago, they had this massive protest in downtown with millions of people in the street. Well, who organized all that? Who paid for all that? It's all being paid for and organized by somebody, even to the point where everybody there was given these little lights, and they had a drone way up, several thousand feet above, taking the pictures of all of these thousands and thousands of lights that were out there to show this massive nighttime protest. Now that cost a lot of money to organize. Who's doing all of this? And if it's not George Soros, it's somebody like it. So what we're seeing here is some sort of privately financed revolution. They're trying to overthrow a legitimately elected government in Serbia. Now, is Serbia, the centerpiece of our foreign policy, and are they strategically placed and these things? Well, not particularly, but this is something that's working, and I would not be surprised to see the government actually successfully be overthrown. And whoever's going to take over are the guys that have been financing it. They're the front men for the money, whoever's been financing it, be it George Soros or him and a bunch of other people doing it. But it's something like that that's happening. The reason I want to mention that too is because this has also started in Greece, which is a NATO country.
Yes.
And so that is a kind of a next step. Now, Greece has always been kind of unstable. They've got economic problems. They're a fairly easy target, and I think that's why they were picked next. But it seems to be the same group is doing the same thing. They're just at a much earlier stage in Greece, and they're at a much more advanced stage in Serbia. But they appear to be headed to success. Well, what the hell does that mean? If you have some private sector, private people who are wealthy taking over countries, and if they take over Serbia, they take over Greece. I mean, holy cow! I mean, that is a big, big deal.
Yes.
What are they going to do now? It's clearly going to be they're going to be some sort of hardcore left wing type of organization, a new government, something like that. Clearly, this is very anti-American. Behind all of this, I would say. I mean, the proof will be in the pudding when we see if they overthrow Serbia, who comes in to that power vacuum will tell us everything we need to know about who's doing it. We'll know then. But I'm telling you right now that it's something like a George Soros if it's not George Soros. And I guarantee you, if that's the case, that is a big, big threat. And those guys would need to be taken out one way or another.
Yeah. Was Greece? Greece has always been pro-American, correct? I mean, they've always sort of had our play in the Mediterranean for the most part. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah, I mean, I would say relationship with Greece has generally been good. They've had some left-wing governments and stuff. They tend to the kind of the social democrat sort of platforms are common in Greece. So not perfect agreement. They're kind of typical European in that sense. But all in all, yeah, we've been allies for since World War II and after World War II, and the relationship generally, all in all, is good. There's good. There's a robust bilateral relationship between the United States and Greece. So it would be both of those places. I mean, if you look at history, for example, in Serbia, basically every major war that takes place in Europe, you march through Serbia at some point. And so it's a very central location for movement, going one direction or another in Europe. And so it's strategic. If I were trying to take over Europe and create problems and create my own countries, and I had billions of dollars to throw at the problem, that would be one of the very first places I would look at. And I think they're doing exactly that because Croatia's next door, the former Yugoslavia countries that were splintered and fighting and all of that. I mean, this is basically the former Yugoslavia. Those countries are probably vulnerable. I mean, you have a Bosnia that's already, kind of a splintered sort of thing. They tried to create a country that was, kind of a city state and turn it into a country. Is that susceptible? Good God, yes. I mean, there's a lot of problems in that area. The fighting is not over there. So, I mean, it would be easy if there were a concerted effort to start it up again. I think it would be easy to do. Croatia, I don't know, might be a little bit tougher, but could be done. I think Bosnia would be child's play. That would be probably where I would go next.
What about Hungary? I've got a question coming out of the YouTube. What about Hungary? Hungary.
Tougher. I mean, they're a more homogeneous country, and they've got their kind of own unique language and culture in some ways. They're more homogeneous. They're Catholic, so I think it'd be much tougher still in Hungary, just because they're just set up a little bit different. Kind of like a Poland is similar. It'd just be a tougher thing to do in Poland because they've got more of their own identity. Not that the Serbians don't have an identity, but there's a lot of other issues there that don't exist in, say, Hungary. So I think it would be difficult. Maybe in the future, it would not be a place I would try to do this right now.
Right. On a scale of 1 to 10, do you see this happening quickly? 10 being the quickest, 1 being slow. Do you think are they liquidating for this to happen right now? Do you even think under Trump though? Do you think they would even try this with him in power? I would see them doing this under Biden, but do you think that they don't really even care who's in power over here right now? That this is something that's been set in motion before, and they're going to follow through with it
Oh
right
yeah,
away?
yeah. This was set in motion long ago. I think they were predicting it would be a Kamala Harris government, so they would be able to go, without any impediments whatsoever to take over or put some sort of puppet government into Serbia. I think they're going forward because, like I said, U.S. government policy towards Serbia is one of Serbia is in the pocket of Russia. And now they have a close relationship with Russia. It's true, but Russia's also stabbed Serbia in the back a lot of times, and Russia's never really done a favor to Serbia on anything.
Mm-hmm.
So they know that too. They're not morons, so not like Kamala Harris. So they figured this stuff out. So I mean, there's they're both Orthodox countries. They've got things in common, Slavic language based things like that. So there's an affinity there, but it's not. They're not joined at the hip either. And like I said, the government in power there now is perfectly happy to get along well with the United States, also, and would be perfectly happy to play a more neutral role in that sense. So that it's not an unfriendly place to be involved with. But the U.S. just hasn't taken that position. So maybe under Marco Rubio with the State Department, you'll see that evolve. The problem is, I don't think anybody cares. I don't think it's being looked at. So,
Well, I
I think
haven't
it's being
heard.
looked at a
You're the
little
first
bit.
person that's brought this up, and that's why we had
Yeah.
you on, John. That's why I paid you the big money to come on here and blow our mind on these Thursday nights on the McFiles. And but I will think, as I'm sitting here listening to you, Brad, what this would do, though, it would change the landscape of Europe. I mean, this would
Yeah.
change the
Yeah.
playing field, brother. This would make us. It's got long-term ramifications, and I think it's got long-term ramifications for the Middle East, and it's got long-term ramifications for America's dealings with our foes, enemies, and our friends right now. Would it not? I mean, and real quick, because we're going to take some questions for you and then get you out of here. But what do you? I mean, how this is serious. I mean, what you're telling us tonight is this a serious realignment of Europe? Is it not?
A major step in that direction. It would be, I think, extraordinarily bad for the United States. I mean, I have no proof who's behind it yet, so it could be a foreign government. There's other people that could do it, but who? They've already got a good relationship with Russia. Why would Russia want to overthrow Serbia right now? It's not the time. They've got their hands full with Ukraine. I don't see it making any sense for them to go into all this effort. China, no, I don't think so. I mean, maybe, but I don't think so. So who would it be? Turkey? No, I don't really see that either. So who is it? That's why as I look at all this stuff, my finger pointing is, I say George Soros, but I mean it kind of almost generically. If it's not George Soros, there's other guys like him out there that would be involved. I would be very surprised when it's all said and done if George Soros wasn't at least tangentially involved. But yes, absolutely, it would be a major shift. It would be very important. It would be all bad. And it has the problem with it particularly is it has a chance to grow and get worse.
Yeah.
And they've already begun in Greece. That's
Yeah.
not a small thing.
No.
If they can overthrow Greece, that's a NATO country. It's kind of in as you pointed out, it has implications in the Middle East. Excuse me. It's just, who's next too? If you have success in 2 or 3 or 4 countries, that's a big deal. It's a dangerous
This is a
big
dangerous deal. Final question of the night, and folks, if you got a question for Brad, we're going to keep him another 10 minutes or so. I don't want to keep him past his bedtime. We wouldn't want Elvis. He's got a different background tonight. See, he did this just to get us sort of this do-si-do, so we wouldn't think that he was behind the Kennedy shootings or something like that, you know. But seriously, though, I do have to ask you a question about the security agencies, FBI, CIA, NSA. I know that you expressed to me last program that you were not a big fan of Ratcliffe, but Patel and Bondi, Waltz with NSA, on scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the best, 1 being the worst, what would you give the security agency so far? And this is another question that maybe you can't answer. And it's not just because if you, it's not something secretive, but it's an opinion thing, and it's maybe too early to tell. Do you feel like that there is going to be some, and when I say justice, I'm not talking revenge, but do you think that Pam Bondi is going to have the strength and fortitude and Patel to see some of these perp walks from some of these people that have done some criminal things, like this J6 committee, these rogue FBI agents that pushed Russiagate, the ones that raided Trump's, that was behind the Mar-a-Lago raid of his house. What's your thoughts right now where we stand with these agencies? And do you think, look, anything, Mickey Mouse would have run the FBI better than what we had before. Mr. Rogers would have run the CIA better than what we had before. But where do you put all this right now in where we're at in 2 months into Trump's runs? What do you put as 2 months into Trump's presidency?
Yeah, a mixed bag as far as grades go for the names that you've mentioned. Let me start with Ratcliffe. You mentioned him first, and I do want to make it clear. I have nothing against Ratcliffe personally. I think he's a good guy. It's just, I guess the example I like to use in this is Marines. I have a lot of Marine friends and former Marine friends, and if you want to take the hill and kill everybody up there, well, by God, send the Marines in because that's what they do. You pick the right tool for the job, and Pam Bondi, for example, is a good example of that. I would give her. You said 1 is good, 10 is bad. I would guess that Bondi's going to turn out about 1 or damn close to being perfect score because she's seasoned at this sort of stuff. She was Attorney General in Florida. Florida's a big state, a lot of crime down there. She's seen a lot of stuff, so she's seasoned pro. Whether she'll be able to do perp walks, this is tough because the immunity, for example, for the January 6th Commission people, they're on a committee at Congress. Their immunity is pretty tough to get passed. That's going to be hard just to do it legally. And she understands how to do it legally. So she's going to have to follow the law pretty carefully, even though the Democrats don't do that. But same goes for looking at some of these guys involved. Prosecutors probably have the best immunity of anybody in the United States. So there's a lot of stuff they can do and get away with it. Like these prosecutors that are out there that get elected and say, elect me because all I'm going to do is go after Trump. That's their platform. I'm going to go after Trump. And, they've got their immunity is enough to cover stuff like that because you can say to them, well, you're just targeting an innocent civilian. And they're going, oh, no, I think he's criminally involved. So I'm going to go after him. And their immunity covers them based on that. So perp walks off. Does Bondi have the courage and ability to do it? Yes, she does. Does the law allow it? Is the question. Uh, Patel, I think he'll do okay. I think it's a little bit early to say. I don't know. I mean, I'm just kind of waiting to see. I think he's a good guy. Certainly, the things you've said in the past has been good. And my problem, like I said, with Ratcliffe, is not. I think he's a good guy. I like him as a person. I think he's fine guy. But he's just not the right guy for that job. Like I said, you want to kill everybody on top of that hill and take it. You send the Marines in because that's what they do. If you want to fix the CIA, don't send some politician lawyer because that's the last guy. He's just ill prepared. He doesn't. He's already been boxed in and is completely clueless as to what's going on around him. And I think you've seen Doge move in there and stuff. The problem with all of those guys is they're effing amateurs. They're amateurs at this stuff. F stands for French, by the way. Let me
I
remind
know.
everybody.
French,
And,
French,
okay,
French amateurs, yes.
that's right. So You've got all these guys that they just, they would walk into my office back at the CIA and I would laugh, because it's like, I, you know, you just, it's the best lies in the entire universe are ones that are completely true. The true ones are the best lies, and they're being surrounded by all that stuff. They're told the truth all the time and don't know they're being lied to. That other type of lie. If anybody, from the Christian people that watch, they've heard of that. That's that lie of omission thing versus lie of commission. But these lawyers and stuff, they just don't seem to grasp all that. They don't understand how the business is done. You cannot send those guys in, the lawyers and these Doge people and stuff like that. You cannot send them into a place like the CIA and have them succeed. They're ill prepared. They're never going to be prepared. It just can't work. You've got to go out there and recruit 40 or 50, grizzled old a-holes like myself and go in and send guys like me in. That give you a chance to fix it, because I know more about that stuff than the guys that are there today, because they don't do that job anymore. I've actually done it, so I've forgotten more than those guys will know. They're not going to. It's just going to be so much harder to fool me, and I know where to go to look to find out. And they probably better than they do. And they, like I said, that what the Trump government administration has to do is find some guys like myself to go in and do it.
Do you would you
And
accept the call if they, we talked about this last time, or would you be willing to accept the call if they came to you and said, "Hey, Brad, come on back"?
I've said for years and years and years, I've said, I think I've told you this a couple of times before. What I've always said is they need to find guys just like me, not me, but guys just like me, because I've been in the government. But when they shot at Trump on that podium and they grazed his ear, it changed for me. That pissed me off to no end. I wouldn't. That's not what I want, but I would feel the moral obligation to do it if asked, because they need it desperately. I don't think they know how desperately they need it, which is part of why I would feel obligated to do it, because they don't know. They need somebody who's going to be able to go in and do this stuff and help them, take them by the hand, and lead them through the process. And
Why
and they
why do
need
you
guys
think that people
like
are
me.
so quick to blame the CIA and accuse the CIA of being behind Kennedy's assassination? Has it ever crossed your mind through the years why your organization has been? I know that. I mean, I saw something funny. I was on the radio. I've got a radio program in the afternoon now, and it was one of the hilarious things that somebody on X tried to make a big deal about was the CIA had secret operations in 5 countries, and I was like, that's what the CIA does, dude. That's what they've been doing for the history of the CIA. And I got Brad Johnson to confirm that that's not a news flash. But why do you think people think so hard about the CIA? And buddy, look, you've given your life to this country. You've given us 30 years to protect, and the CIA is always looked upon as evil and bad. And you're dealing with bad characters. You're dealing with bad governments. Look at this thing in Serbia. This thing in North Korea. All of these nations that are out to destroy us and kill us tonight. Who do we want to send over there? Mary Poppins? Do we want to send Mr. Rogers? I keep using Mr. Rogers. We don't want to send Mr. Rogers. And I hate to say it, we don't want to send a how did you call it? A bureaucrat lawyer into these situations, buddy. We need a field agent. We need some field people, and that's one of the things we talked about a couple of years ago. That you had been very concerned at how the CIA under the Haspel was they were changing the field operations into a almost like a nerdy computer game that they were trying to fight these wars and do these things from a computer. And Brad, the world is just as dangerous now as it was 60 years ago, is it not? Probably more dangerous, I would think. But why do you think the CIA gets
More
such a bad
dangerous.
rap?
Well, I think it's fairly simple, really, for that. The CIA is always, everybody's always suspicious of it because it's behind a wall of secrecy. So it's very difficult to know what's actually going on there. I mean, even on these interviews and shows, I mean, I'm very pro CIA. I wish the CIA could go back to doing what it did before, where it was the master of espionage. And back in my day, I know this sounds a bit stupid, but back in my day, especially in the early days, we could go toe to toe with the rest of the effing world, the rest of the French world,
French world.
toe to toe with all of them at the same time, even our allies. We could go toe to toe with everybody at the same time. Now, it's I got to say it's that guy who said, oh, they're active in 5 countries. They probably are. We sent Liberace to one. We sent Mr. Rogers to one, and and that's what we're doing now. I mean, it's really become a joke. I mean and that's what really pisses me off about it. That's why I do this, is because it's what we're doing is we're dropping our guard.
That's
What
what.
part of what got us that got us into the World War I and II is we didn't know what the hell was going on.
It's a great
We
point.
weren't prepared, and you have to be out there looking at all this stuff. And you're right, the left for decades, ever since the Frank Church Commission way back when, has been targeting the CIA and trying to destroy it. It started in that period under Jimmy Carter, where they really took the knife to a lot of the CIA personnel, and it has never stopped since then. And it was built back up for a while under Reagan, but then under attack again by the Democrat presidents that followed, until we've gotten to this point where it doesn't really exist. I mean, I was operations guy, which means I was out in the field doing the covert action, recruiting spies, all meeting spies, all that stuff that's the operations into stuff. And the cadre of people, and keep in mind, this is a highly specialized talent, highly specialized. It takes 20 years to take like a first year newbie guy and turn him into a true professional. It
That's,
takes a long time.
that's amazing.
And there's a lot of professions that are that way. It's just not the only one, but that's what it takes. And they dissolved all of that. It's all gone. They don't have an operations specialty anymore. I mean, now it's one size fits all. Oh, you're going to go out and do that? Okay, take this 2-week course. Well, would you? I like to compare it to brain surgery because of you don't have to be as smart as a brain surgeon to be a ops guy, but you got to be a little trickier though. And
Right?
and would you want your brain surgeon to go take a 2-week course to learn how to do the surgery on you?
No.
You know,
No.
no. So if you're a spy out overseas working for the United States, you want to be working for some guy that has took a 2-week course on how to do this.
No.
Effing no. The
No.
French say no.
French, no. But you told me
Yeah.
something one night we talked, and it's not just that, Brad. It's these agents that sign up for this. Look, this is one of those jobs. This ain't a janitor's job at the Motel 6, man, that you go home to your family every night at 5 o'clock. There's going to be some agents that don't go home to their families. And I look at the FBI in the same boat. I look at all of these security agencies, and I see all this bad mouthing these agencies out here like they're some evil ogre. And people just, it makes me sick that people don't understand the cost of why we're protected, why we don't have these attacks on our nation every day. And yes, the world is dangerous, and there is no doubt in my mind that the CIA, and I'm not even saying this anti-CIA, I'm saying it pro-CIA. I don't mind if they got to do some somewhat nefarious things to keep us safe at this point, because you're not going to get anybody in that world out there. They don't care whether America's safe. They want America destroyed. So as you said, we got to stand toe to toe. And I, you know, these agents, when they sign up, they're told that at the beginning, are they not? I mean, this ain't Monopoly. You
Oh,
may not pass go and collect $200 when you come home.
it used to be that way. Certainly. I mean, you were. I mean, the I used to joke when I meet FBI guys because they would say, "Oh, I get FBI. Hey, nice to meet you, CIA." Shake their hand, and everything. Say, "Well, so you're professional law enforcement. That's great. We got something in common. I'm a professional criminal." And no FBI guy ever laughed at that. I always thought that was funny, but they never, not one ever laughed at that. And but it's true. I mean, what was my job? It was to go out overseas and conduct espionage. Every country in the world, to conduct espionage against them is illegal. Just like it's illegal for them to come here and do it to us.
Thank
That's
you.
the name of the game. And if you want to find out what terrorists are doing, okay, let's all just put our thinking caps on for a minute. Terrorists. So those are bad guys, right? So bad guys. So you want somebody to tell you what the bad guys are up to, you got to have a bad guy tell you what the bad guys are doing.
Great
For
point.
Christ's sake, grow up, put your big boy pants on, and let's go out in the world and kick ass again. And now they just don't do it. Now they don't even know how to recruit. I mean, they've become such a joke and an embarrassment. And this, like I said, this pisses me off. I want to see the CIA be strong, vital and be a major player in the world and a major player in our national security, keeping us safe. And this is why you see a lot of the overlap. Now, the military sees all this stuff. The Pentagon knows all this stuff. They all know what I'm saying. You know, if you get anybody who's got some experience, is knowledgeable, they'll tell you the same stuff I'm saying, and they'll certainly say it among themselves. They're more careful because they're political when they get to be a general. But they all know that's true. So that's why they're expanding their capability. Why do you have DIA? Why do you have the Defense Intelligence Agency? Why do you have all this stuff? Because the guys that are supposed to be doing it aren't doing it. So that's why you see them do it. They're trying to, the Army's always trying to train people in intelligence issues and things like that. You have the Marine Corps has an intelligence branch, Army. They all have their own intelligence services and multiple ones of them, because the CIA's, for the most part, sitting around with its thumb up its rear.
Yeah, pretty good stuff. I'll agree with you, man. I think it's good stuff. Peter says Obama was one of the ones that started pulling him out of the field. Is that a fair statement? Was it Obama? Was it sooner than him? When did all this downturn? That's not a bad question. When did the downturn sort of start going full speed?
Full speed. Yeah, I would say, as I mentioned earlier, it began. Look up Frank Church, and he
Okay.
was a senator, died of cancer, but he did what was called the Church Commission, and a lot of what he did was investigate the CIA and the FBI, and he invested government abuse was sort of what his stated goal was. What he really was after was to become president of the United States. So he was trying to make a name for himself. But then Jimmy Carter got elected, and Jimmy Carter started acting on that sort of behavior because there was some ill will towards the government built up. And some of these places were bastions of conservatism. Because if you really know what's going on in the world and you're knowledgeable and reasonably intelligent, you become a conservative because you start to see what's real.
That's true.
And
That's true.
it's a natural process. So the CIA was a bastion of conservatism at the time. Now that continued. Clinton did tremendous damage to the CIA. There were a lot of words being bandied about: do more with less. Glide path. They had early outs for the ops guys because they were trying to gut that aspect of it, because that was kind of one of the more hardcore conservative areas. Because, like I said, you're out overseas, you see the truth of things, how it really works, and who's doing what to who. You become conservative, because if you're dealing with facts, you're going to become conservative. And so they don't want that. They want that destroyed. Now, I would say your questioner there is absolutely correct. Did it hit absolute full speed and become, it culminated under Obama with John Brennan as the director? That's where it culminated. He was the one that destroyed operations and got rid of it in what he called the reorganization. And that was the sort of final destruction that took place. So, yeah, I would say you're the guy who asked the question is correct. That was when it was completed, though. I would phrase it that way.
You never was a fan of Gina Haspel, the one that Trump put over their first term, were you?
Well, Gina Haspel, interestingly, Gina Haspel was no, yeah, correct. I was not a fan, and it was also one of the things that I looked at with Mike Pompeo when he went in as director. He made her deputy. That's when I knew for sure that Mike Pompeo was a failure and had destroyed his career, which has proven to be true. I was saying it back then, and it's proven to be true, because Gina Haspel was one of the main lieutenants of John Brennan.
Mm-hmm.
So he was part of that hardcore, hard left wing, anti-CAA, anti-America wing. So now, guess what on Gina Haspel? So Gina Haspel had earlier in her career been chief of station in London. So she gets handpicked to go back to London by John Brennan. And why? It does happen, but it's not super common. Going to London as chief of station is a pretty choice job. So why did she get picked to go back? Well, what I point out is she went back at the time where the Steele dossier was being put together. Where was it being put together? It was being put together in London. So it would be very unusual for the FBI to be involved in going over there and to not meet with the station, and for the Steele dossier being done for Perkins Coie, the law firm, all this stuff to be going on in her country, whether she's there as chief of station. it would be very unusual for her not to have been involved in all of that sort of stuff. So, I mean, the simplest explanation, which may or may not be true, but the simplest explanation is she was handpicked by John Brennan, who was, in my opinion, the mastermind of the Steele dossier. He was the one that, in my opinion, I believe, went to Hillary Clinton, sold her on the idea. She picked the lawyer's office to go do it as a cutout, to go to then to put it together, and it was being backed by John Brennan at the CIA, who had to send a trusted lieutenant to London to see it through. Then, and afterwards we start to see these emails back to James Comey, the then director of the FBI, who James Comey was looking at this going, this Steele dossier is all BS, or maybe French BS, and we shouldn't be using this stuff. And John Brennan said, no, you have to, because it's the Crown document. This is the only thing that connects Trump to the Russians, and this is what we have to do to run the Trump collusion. So I think John Brennan, Comey to a lesser degree, Gina Haspel, I think all those guys need to be investigated for what their involvement was in this. And I think we need to go over and have a sit down with the Brits and say, listen, were you interfering? I mean, were you in a fraudulent deal to try and claim that President Trump was involved with the Russians? Because if you were, by French, that's an act of war.
It is an act of war, and I'm glad you said that, and I hope Patel does it, and I think he needs to. Hey, Muslim, was Brennan the Muslim Brotherhood? Do you think he was the establisher of the Muslim Brotherhood? I got that question coming out of YouTube. I know that sounds far-fetched to folks, but look, he was not hiding his Muslim background. What's your take on that?
Well, he was not the founder of the Muslim Brotherhood. He had nothing to do with that. If that's the question, was he a Muslim? Yes. He converted to the Muslim faith. Yes, that part's true. He also, along with James Comey, voted for the Communist Party candidate. I forget that guy's name, but way back when, voted for the Communist Party candidate, and he and James Comey both talked about it. I mean, talk about red flag. How did those guys end up being heads of an agency? I mean, oh my God. If nothing else, just their judgment, kind of judgment do you have to vote for the idiots who are in the Communist Party? At any rate, he was Muslim. He did it, trying to, I don't know, impress some guy, in an Arab country, I think. I don't know if it was a genuine conversion or not, but he claimed to be Muslim and claimed to be practicing. I don't know if that's true or not. But certainly that's the impression around the agency, was that he was indeed practicing the faith.
Yeah. What is your thought? So one final question. I know you've been here. We've had you for an hour, and I appreciate you being with us tonight, buddy. I really do. I know you appreciate you coming on even after your knee surgery, and we're grateful you're doing better. One final question. Roger Hooker, this military-industrial complex, this dark money, do you think there's some dark money going on with the military complex, Brad, in our country? And is that military complex unhappy that Trump's trying to stop these wars? Because it seems to me that Biden was hell bent on getting these conflicts rived up. We haven't even talked about Israel and Hamas tonight. They're starting to fight again. Trump has done everything he can. Hamas just ain't returning these hostages. But what's your take on the military-industrial complex in our country, and where's that money coming from? Is it the Soros group again? Is this all Soros, the same people that are trying to destabilize Serbia and Greece?
Well, interesting. As some sort of like homogeneous, organized, like single cell being that is out there operating on all these levels and stuff, I would resist that concept. I don't think there's anything like that exists. Are there all sorts of things going on at the same time? Yes. Are some of those dirty? Yes. Could some of them lead back to people that belong in jail, like a George Soros sort of thing? Yes. I mean, those people are, the communists always called us the enemies of humanity, but the real enemies of humanity are guys like that. Yes, I think those things go on. A lot of it is what you see at AID that has been publicized, is that they would go out and give grant money to somebody, and that grant would go give money to 25 other groups, and then those 25 other groups then would contribute that money, a portion of it back to the Democrat Party and stuff like that. I mean, that's organized money laundering. I think in that sense, that's organized. I would call that dark money. And that certainly is illegal. I'd have to say, if that's part of the arrangement. So I would love to see those perp walks. And speaking of that, I would love to see some perp walks on that score. But within the military, does that happen? Absolutely. I mean, a lot of these generals that get out and retire and head up big companies and things like that. Yeah, I mean, you see the same thing out of the CIA and FBI. They'll get out. The senior guys get out and go into these companies. And are those companies shuffling around money? Does government funds go to them? Government contracts? Yes, yes, yes. All that stuff happens. So, is there any shenanigans behind the scenes going on? Yes, yes, yes. But it's kind of uh, individual. That's not maybe the right word, but it's not, like I said, it's not one
Gotcha.
huge mass that's organized. There's
Gotcha.
just pockets of this stuff going on.
Fair enough. That's a great answer to that. Do you have you been shocked that the USAID has been funding so much terrorism around the globe and it's been basically being funneled from taxpayers? I know that nothing will shock Brad Johnson, but has there been any of Elon Musk findings that have just even made Brad Johnson say, "What the whiskey tango foxtrot," as you tell me sometimes?
I can't take credit for whiskey tango foxtrot. By the way, that's a military thing. I got it from Army guys. Uh,
Okay.
the no, none of that's a surprise to me. But keep in mind, I was overseas for working in embassies for 20 years. And where's the ID? They're overseas in embassies, and they're operating in my country. As CIA guy there, I would pretty quickly know who's doing what to whom, and I would see what they were up to and stuff, where this money was going, and I would point out to some of the State Department people stuff every once in a while. There is no more broken organization in the world than State Department. I'll have to say Marco Rubio so far is he's beginning to look to me like kind of a C student on his handling of State Department so far. I'm hoping for the best. I hope he steps in. He's had conflict with Doge over this. He's wants to go it his own way. Apparently, he's winning that argument. We'll see what he does with it if he, going forward. But like I said, I would mention these things. I'd point out corruption to the State Department people and how things were going and how this doesn't work and how it's ending up in the hands of this guy and that guy and stuff like that. And they go, oh well, at least some of the money's going where it's supposed to.
Yeah.
That's what they would always say. The AID people, all those guys would say, oh well, at least some of the money's going where it's supposed to. They don't care. I mean, they just didn't care. They were perfectly happy to see it go to Hamas and those guys because they thought that was the right thing to do. That's who they are. That's who those people are. They're anti-American.
I believe it, buddy. Listen, man, it's been such a good show tonight. Thank you for coming on and listen. With the way the world's changing, I may have to start making you a weekly guest. But seriously though, it's good to see you tonight. We'll have you back on soon. And I just want to say our prayers continue to be with you for your recovery. But before we go, one final 20-second question. I'm taking it from what you said before. You're not expecting a major bombshell from the JFK files.
No, I don't think so. I think, in fact, what you're going to see is kind of a anticlimactic reaction to that. And I think what you're going to happen is the real evidence that's in there that's interesting. I think you're going to see the press poo-poo it.
Yeah. How about Bobby Kennedy's files and Martin Luther's files and even Epstein's? Any gut feeling that we're going to have any kind of closure on those?
I would love to see the Epstein files. That is what I really want to see. And I
I
mean,
think that's
does anybody
bigger.
really honestly believe he committed suicide? Really, honestly, anybody think that? They killed that man. And if they would just put out those airplane records, because the pilot records who's on the aircraft when it's flying to Epstein's porn island thing. I would love to see that stuff. I don't know. I hope so. They're saying they're going to do it. I hope they do. Bobby Kennedy and who's the other one you mentioned? I'm sorry.
Martin Luther King.
Martin Luther King. Sorry. Yeah. I don't think there's a lot of importance in those. I think they were at that point. I think there was a lot of copycat stuff going on. People wanting to be famous for that. I mean, like the guy that shot John Lennon. I kind of throw those into that category.
I got you.
kind of fringy people that want to go down in history somehow, and I think they're shooting people for that.
Yeah. Sort of like Chris McDonald hosting a McFiles show for 7.5 years trying to be famous, but on a scale of 1 to 10 is a -6, right?
Well, see now you've I think you've kind of not quite got the name right. The Mac files. Yeah, I think it's them C files. That's how I
Yeah,
read
the
the name.
MC
Is them
files.
C
That's what I
files.
need to call it. Maybe I need to change
Yeah,
things up. Call it the Doge Report at night. Call it. I could
yeah.
call it all sorts of things. I gotta up my game as we're getting into this next year. Make people get excited about the show again. I've
Well, X files were famous. Why not the C files?
the C files. That would
Yeah.
or maybe the French files. And that would be
Oh, yeah.
just our internal joke with each other what the French file stood for. Hey buddy, it's good to see you tonight. I'll see you soon. We'll visit our steakhouse again when I get up to see you in Washington this summer. We know
All right.
we appreciate you much, and I appreciate your insight as always. Tell Elvis I said hello. I like
Will
the
do.
background. Looks like a normal American background. Don't look like that CIA dungeon that you're down there in, but it's all good, man. But appreciate you, Brad. Have a good night,
All
buddy.
right, Chris.
Brad
All right, you
Johnson,
too. Take
everybody.
care.
Put some fire in
Thank
that
you,
house
everyone.
for him. Thank you for the questions out there. And good deal. We were having some problems with our Zoom link. I'm going to come back over here real quick tonight. And John McNaughton was the artist that painted this. This is from Tuesday night's show. Did you enjoy Brad? I know you did, and we're grateful for him. And thank you all for the good questions. Great, great interview. And we appreciate him so much. He is a good man. He's one of the good guys. I know that people have painted everybody in the CIA as the bad guy, and they're not. Brad Johnson is a good guy. And look, I know that there's mixed opinion about what the CIA does, and um, I'll agree with Brad. Look, folks, we live in a world that is, I wish that Jesus was here, and I don't mean this lightly. I mean this very seriously. Look, when Jesus comes back, there won't be a need for the CIA. There won't be a need for the FBI. There won't be a need for any of these agencies because peace and law and justice and righteousness will rule over the earth. But until he comes back, we live in a world that is, not a world that we wish that was. And it's a dangerous world. And there are forces both within this nation and without this nation tonight that want to see this nation destroyed. And they want to eradicate faith. They want to eradicate faith. And I appreciate Brad Johnson and what he's given to this country for 30 years in trying to do his job, at least his part, to keep it safe. And I understand. I've had talks with him, and I've understood when he's talked to me exactly his concern because he feels like that the powers that be in D.C. have lessened the standards for these field agents. And you heard him tonight. It was amazing. He told me that before privately about the 20-year thing. He said it takes about 20 years to train an agent from the time they come into the CIA as a rookie to get them ready for field work. It's a 20-year process. That's an amazing number to think how long it takes for somebody to be ready to go do what they do. And now, as he said, it's a 2 week course. Go get him, go defend our country. It's not good. It's not good. It's like telling a pilot, take 2 weeks. Maybe that's what's wrong with our airlines. And that's some of the problem with these planes crashing, folks. You got pilots behind it that probably took a 2 week course and thought they could fly a plane. I'm not making light of that, but I do appreciate him. And again, folks, I do want to. I'll just say this tonight. I don't know who all's listening out there. If my tone Tuesday night came across a little snarky about the JFK files, I just want to apologize. I was not meaning to bust anybody's apple or bubble or turn over anybody's cart and bust your little party about JFK and those files. It was, and I didn't mean if I was rude or anything to anybody. It certainly wasn't intentional. I hope you've known Chris long enough that Chris knee jerk sometimes. I look in that chat sometimes when I see something, and I probably need to do better. Still, I'm working on it, not being so knee jerk about stuff I see out there, um, and I don't mean to be short with anybody. Look, we love you all. We're grateful for you, and we've come a long way. I mean, I've improved a lot. I'll be the first to tell you. The first couple of years, I was on edge quite a bit, and I've settled down a lot. Dory West to tell you that. Dory used to be scared of me. She said. Now she hugs my neck and invites me, to host my conferences at the Acts 242 Event Center. So we've come a long way, haven't we, D? Um, but you ain't got to be scared of the bear man. The Mac man is mellowed out. Trust me. But I was only point. I'll just say this as I close tonight, folks. My point about the whole thing with JFK is this, and I still make it. Look, I still stand by what I said Tuesday night. In light of other dangers that this country is facing tonight, this thing in Serbia and Greece, first I've heard about it. I mean, I didn't really, and I'm going to be looking into it more after listening to Brad tonight. I'm going to go and I'm going to start looking into this a little bit deeper. And I think in light of the nation to where we're at tonight, our attention, and I'll agree that it may not be a distraction, and that is, if I came across again making light of it, that's my opinion, but I didn't mean for it to come across that way. Look, I know that this is important to a lot of people, but I'm totally with Brad that I do not think that there's going to be any bombshell revelation that is going to change the course of history for this country and tell us things that we just probably didn't already know anyway. And I'm saying this first of all, just politically, just me to you, Chris to you. If you've got the time to read all those 80,000 documents, then, and if you want to do that, it's okay. It's okay with us. I mean, we're not trying to make you feel bad about that. You knock yourself out and spend all the time that you want to reading these documents. I don't think at the end of your journey and that you're going to walk away with any kind of different thing. But this is the thing: when you finish reading those 80,000 page document, country's still going to be dangerous tonight. Country's still going to be in a mess. We're going to still be in a spiritual mess. We're going to still be in a moral mess. We got enemies, both foreign and domestic, that want to see us killed. We've got a war in Russia and Ukraine that don't seem to want to end. We got Hamas attacking Israel again tonight. Israel attacking Hamas tonight. By the way, this is not a knee-jerk reaction. I read this comment this afternoon, and I've had a few hours to think about it. But the individual in Rumble that tried to tell me that Israel bombing hospitals and moms and babies is not the same as bombing Hamas, your statement, and again, I don't mean this mean-spirited, that statement is the feeling of many, but it's an ignorant statement. Now, I didn't call you ignorant, but that's an ignorant statement of things on the ground. Hamas gets behind hospitals, and they hide in hospitals, and they hide behind women and children. And when Israel has to go bomb Hamas tunnels and bomb Hamas outposts where they're shooting rockets at Israel, many times they have to go into these places and they try their best not to kill moms and babies. While I'm at it tonight, let me morally clarify this for you, that it was not Israel cutting the heads off of babies and putting them in ovens and killing babies and sending babies back in coffins. It was Hamas. So when you say, well, Israel is bombing moms and babies and that's not the same as bombing Hamas, I disagree with you, sir. It is them bombing Hamas because Hamas is a coward and they hide behind hospitals and they hide behind moms and babies and children and innocent civilians. So there you have it. I think I said that pretty calmly. But I just wanted to say to the people that possibly took offense Tuesday night to this JFK situation, folks, to me, on the list of 1 to 10, the JFK looks down to me on a level of about number 15 tonight of the importance. I know that for some, it's more important than others, and that's okay. because that's what makes our world go round. There are some things that just turn people's buttons on, and there's other things that don't. And I guess we all got to learn to accept that and just love each other and move on and, you know, be be our own people and care for our country and love our nation. Um, and again, I didn't mean any offense or people to think that I was not taking their opinion seriously Tuesday night. And if I came across that way, Chris is man enough to tell you that if he did that, I'm sorry. And Chris is man enough to tell you I'm sorry tonight for doing that. I certainly didn't mean to. And you know I love you. And I've been doing this 7.5 years. You've come to know me. And anyway, I'll leave that alone and so forth. Flammability says my class is something to be rivaled. Oh, thank you, Flammability. Um, Brad Johnson. Brad Johnson would disagree with that. Me and Brad Johnson, we've learned to joke with each other. He's a good man. I just love Brad. I do. He's my buddy. You got to meet him in person. He is just as funny in person. Me and him. I never forget this. I always tell this story. We was at a Christmas party. I think it was right before. It was 2019 or 2020. It was before the election. So it had to have been 2019, December of 2019, going into 2020, because it was before the election. And we was at a Christmas party, and he had invited me to come, and I was so honored to be there with him. We met a lot of nice people that night, and I don't know what I said. I was telling a joke. I was telling him a joke, and the joke just bombed. You know, he didn't laugh or nothing. And then he smiled, and he looked at me. He said, if you ever tell me a bad joke like that again, I am going to come kill you myself. And he just looked at me. I wasn't sure if he was being serious or he was joking. And then he patted me on the back. He said, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. But that's the kind of guy Brad Johnson is. And he is so funny. But he's a good man. I tell you, he's the best person to understand the world. Eric Caron's another one. I appreciate him. Christopher Hall. We got some great, great people. There ain't no better guest than you find here on the McFiles. I know they may not be household names, but in my book, they're the best. They're the best. They are absolutely the best. I appreciate you being with me tonight. Listen, I'm going to let you go tonight. I was going to have Leslie Millway on. We're going to try to get Leslie on tomorrow night. Tomorrow night's Friday night. It's 9:30 already. Instead of me getting her up late, I'm going to try to get her on for a short time tomorrow. We'll talk with her by phone. And we're going to talk about the swatting. We've had 15 conservatives swatted. We're going to talk about that tomorrow night. Join me tomorrow afternoon, K-Star Radio, 2 o'clock to 3. You Bible students, I'll see you in the morning on the McFiles Faith Network. We love you guys. And final Bible study of the week. And then we'll be back here tomorrow night for our Friday night wrap up. Whew, we got a lot of stuff to wrap up. Be with me tomorrow. Angelina Orsini, she's going to be a guest on the McFiles, hopefully next week. She's going to be our guest on the radio tomorrow. She's the producer of our show on K-Star, and I appreciate her. And we're going to talk to her in person on the phone tomorrow, but we're going to have her here next week to introduce her to you. I think she's been on our show before. We did it. She interviewed me, or I interviewed her. We did something together about a year ago, year and a half, and she is such a good lady. Precious, her and Frank are great people, and we'll have her. And we got Leslie Millway tomorrow night. We'll talk about this swatting. Listen, our poll. Let me give you the poll figures. 89%. I'm shocked. We had one person give Trump a D. We had somebody gave Trump a D. Interesting. 10% gave him a B. 89% give him an A. 92 people. The person that give him a D, I'm just wondering, why in the world would you give him a D? McFiles Forum, if that's you, I'm not going to reveal your name, but I'm curious, if that's you out there, whoever did that, unless you're just trying to be a snot, to put our poll numbers at D, and you're just trying to be ugly, but give me a reason why you don't think Trump's done a good job. Maybe that'll be a good discussion tomorrow night. And Flammability, thank you for telling me I got class. I usually don't hear that without a few binoculars in front of it that are not good. May the Lord bless you. May the Lord bless you tonight. All you JFK lovers and other these file lovers, we love you. We ain't upset with you. And we don't mean to make you feel like we didn't care about your opinion. That's why I brought Brad Johnson on. That's why I brought Brad on tonight. I wanted to hear from the horse's mouth because everybody's claiming the CIA was behind it. I just wanted to let him to go on record and tell you it wasn't. Just saying. Just saying. I'm with Elaine Willard too tonight. She said unless that CIA agent is like Jack Bauer, I don't want him protecting our country. I agree with that, Elaine. I definitely agree with that. Have a good night, everybody. We're grateful to have you on a McFile Thursday night. See you back here tomorrow night. Until then, McDonald out. Have a good one. Good night.